3 days after the red flag law kicked in, and we've learned of the first case where it could be applied. A Denver police officer may be the first person to petition the court. The state is warning folks about a program meant to keep healthcare costs cheap. RTD says it has candidates for a new leader. They just won't tell us who. And you share your good news for the first time in 2020. That's next. The first known case involving Colorado's new red flag law is working through the courts right now. That is the law that allows someone to petition the court to get guns away from someone who poses a threat. But in this first case, law enforcement already has custody of the guns, and they aren't sure they should give them back. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger broke this story this afternoon, and this case is unusual because of who petitioned the court and why, Marshall.
Denver police, Steve, are the first we know of to use this law. DPD currently has guns in its property bureau and is seeking a hearing in front of a judge before giving them back to a Denver man. We were able to get the 5-page petition filed by a Denver police sergeant in probate court. It details a domestic violence investigation between a 26-year-old Denver man and his wife from December 29th, before the red flag law went into effect. During the investigation, the man turned over 2 guns to DPD. They placed the guns in custody in their property bureau. We're not naming the man in this story because the Denver district attorney is not going to file charges against him or his wife in the domestic violence case. Normally, DPD would give the guns back. But now that the red flag law exists, a police sergeant petitioned the court saying there's been a credible threat because the man made suicidal statements during the investigation. A hearing is set for 2 weeks from now, which is when a judge will decide if the gun should be returned to the man or if a permanent extreme risk protection order should be in place for 364 days. This case also gave me the opportunity to see Denver Police's red flag law policy for the very first time. It's 7 pages long. It explains how to handle when someone else petitions a judge to have police go get the guns from someone's home. Denver, unlike other counties we've heard from, will enforce the red flag petitions. According to this policy, if someone fails to notify the court they've turned in their weapons within 2 days of being told to, the court will notify DPD's domestic violence unit. A sergeant will notify the city attorney's mental health unit, and a detective will be assigned. They'll prepare a search warrant and execute the search warrant in the same manner as any other search warrant. Based on the policy, Steve, it appears Denver could go into your home if you're ordered by a court to hand in your guns, if you don't hand in your guns.
Okay, so when we talked about this law before, we were so focused on the fact that it could be a family member who petitions the court. This is interesting to see that in this case, it's law enforcement.
And it was or family member or law enforcement. Some of the detractors said, well, what if you're a roommate or something like that? I talked to the bill's sponsor, Tom Sullivan, about, we hadn't talked about this, already having the guns. We talked about going to get the guns. And he thought he hadn't heard about this either and said he hopes it means someone's going to get the help they need. But the very first case, I wouldn't have been able to guess that, man, someone already has the guns and just doesn't want to give them back, and that it would be a police department.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in court and whether or not it'll be a public hearing, whether or not we'll be able to see this law actually in action. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. Now, leaders in at least 37 Colorado counties have passed resolutions declaring themselves as Second Amendment sanctuaries in opposition to that red flag law. Mesa and Yuma County joined the list since our last report. Police departments and sheriff's offices were asked to create their own policies to follow the law. Some sheriffs, like Weld County Sheriff Steve Reams, they are willing to face jail time before taking anyone's guns. We've learned the family of Kendrick Castillo, the teen who was killed while stopping a school shooter, has filed a notice of claim against STEM School, Highlands Ranch. The claim, which is not a lawsuit just yet, is actually a legal notice that claims the school failed to exercise reasonable care to protect Kendrick and other students. It also says the school failed to heed to warnings from a parent who expressed concerns that a shooting would happen at that school. Castillo's family is seeking more than $500,000 in damages if this does go to court trial. Their attorney, Dan Kaplis, says the legal process will be used to reveal the full truth about what led up to that attack. The killing of an Iranian leader has divided Colorado's congressional delegation right along party lines. The Republicans support President Donald Trump. The Democrats reference legislation that could have held back some of the president's powers to do something like this. In a statement this morning, 2 of Colorado's Democrats, Diana DeGette and Joe Neguse, referenced legislation that they tried to pass earlier this year to prevent this. What they are referring to is the National Defense Authorization Act, the annual funding bill for the military. More progressive members of Congress tried to add amendments to that bill, curbing the president's authority to use military force against Iran. They were rejected. And many experts have said today that even if those amendments had been on the bill, the president still would have had the authority to do this, as this was an attack on an individual who the president says poses a threat to the country. RTD dropped news like it was hot in the waning hours of a Friday. They announced there are 5 candidates now for the interim general manager to replace outgoing GM Dave Genova. Genova announced his surprise retirement back in November, leaving RTD amid an ongoing operator shortage that's led to canceled trips, mandatory overtime, and frustrated passengers. The agency is considering service cuts because of all this. So they announced that there are 5 internal and external candidates. Won't tell us who those people are. We asked them this afternoon, and a spokeswoman simply said that we decided not to release the names. The board president clarified to me confidentiality important during this part of the process, and they will release names when they have finalists for the job. Now, this is only an interim post. The board will start a nationwide search for a permanent replacement later this year. Health insurance has become so expensive for some families, they've ditched it completely and started putting their money into what's essentially a communal pool of money to pay for medical needs. It's a choice families have been making for years, but then complaints started coming in. The state turned their attention to 2 companies, and for the first time, they told them to stop doing business in Colorado. Anusha Roy explains why that kind of attention will continue this year.
Healthcare sharing ministry, cost sharing plan.
There are different names, but the idea is the same. Every month, people put money into a communal medical fund instead of towards traditional insurance.
So they're often, the monthly premiums are lower.
But the state says it doesn't always work out how people anticipated.
Things that they had expected would be covered weren't covered.
When the complaints started coming in over the last year, the state focused their attention on Trinity Healthcare and Elyria Healthcare. The companies worked together, and both got cease and desist letters over the summer for what the state says were misleading marketing practices.
They're extremely worrisome.
This kind of cost-sharing plan has been around for decades.
Going around for at least 15 to almost 20 years that I know of.
MSU professor Dr. Jeff Helton said he believes the intentions are good.
Oh, I'd say they all make an effort to do good work. The problem we run into is how they attract people into those ministries, and particularly how they attract money into them.
And not everyone is reading the fine print.
It's not until they get a bill that they find out that that service isn't covered.
It's a very niche program that works really well for a small segment of the population.
In Eagle County, where the Chamber of Commerce says 17% of the population is uninsured, this kind of program has helped around 300 people.
Part-time employees or seasonal employees are not typically eligible for a small group insurance plan.
Chris Romer with the Chamber says they listened when the state called language describing their program confusing.
Vetted our language and changed a lot of our messaging to align with the requests that the state had.
So it turns out that one of the companies doing business in Eagle County actually got in trouble in another state, but is still allowed to do business in Colorado. So when we told Eagle County about it, they said they still think that this cost-sharing program is a good option for the few people who need it in that county.
So now this is in the spotlight. The question is, will it be legislated?
Yeah, so currently no one is really keeping tabs on this. The state, the feds, no one, because they're not insurance companies. So in the next 2 weeks, we're expecting to see a bill that's going to be put out to really just track the number of companies like this that are doing business in Colorado, how many people are signing up for it, because none of that data is really available. But in the meanwhile, the state is saying reach out to them if you've had an issue. Also, if you're having trouble understanding some of that fine print so that you just know what you're signing up for.
I want to make sure people know what they're getting into. Anusha Roy, thank you. Yet another Colorado brewery is closing its doors. Today, Wildwoods in Boulder announced on Facebook that they are pouring up their last pint next Saturday. The owners say they are starting a new chapter in their life. Didn't go into much detail after that. This comes off of a year of tough times for Colorado breweries. In 2019, several breweries and at least 5 local homebrew businesses closed shop. Makes us wonder if 2020 will be a similar year. The Brewers Association says probably.
Even though we're seeing, some more challenging marketplace, this is still a healthy and vibrant market. And, some of Colorado's challenges right now are because it's one of the most successful markets for craft beer in the nation, has some of the highest market share and has some of the densest breweries per capita. So this shouldn't be viewed purely as a negative. but is a maturing market and one of the most developed craft beer markets in the country.
So fear not, Colorado. We are not nearing the end of craft breweries, but the Brewers Association says new businesses need to step it up if they want to keep their taps flowing.
If you're just going to be the local brewer who makes a local IPA, it's going to be really difficult in today's market. If you truly think you can bring something new to the marketplace, style-wise, service-wise, location-wise, to a new demographic, then you have a chance.
A lot of IPAs out there. Watson says that another reason we are seeing so many breweries close may also be linked to the new law allowing grocery stores to sell beer. Smaller breweries depend on getting money from liquor store sales. So if that's not happening, they're taking a hit.
It's a unique form of art that requires a lot of snow. Good thing Silverthorne is covered in it. Twice this week, the Antero Reservoir dipped 48 degrees below zero, but nearby, a mountain town only dropped to -9 degrees. You asked why, so we found an answer to your next question.
We want to let you know we just got a response from STEM School Highlands Ranch about the claims filed against them from families of victims of the shooting there. The spokesperson says they disagree with those claims, but they cannot comment any further. We'll get you more on that tonight at 9 and 10. Twice this week, the Antero Reservoir in Park County, southwest of Denver, reached temperatures 48 degrees below zero. That is cold. While nearby in Fairplay, it wasn't as bitterly cold.
Which brings us to our next question from a viewer named Jerry. Jerry wants to know, what is it about the geography around Antero that makes it much colder? 9 News meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen recently looked into this for our 4 p.m. newscast. It's a few things, according to Corey. One is cold air drainage. The colder the air, the heavier it is. So the coldest air slides down the slopes of the surrounding mountain ranges. Then clear skies at night allow any heat to rise, dropping the temps even further, which is called radiational cooling. As for the difference in fair play, that was because of what's called an inversion, when there is warm air above the cold air. Since fair play is 1,000 feet higher than Antero, it was much warmer up there. You can catch Corey's full explanation on the 9 News website.
Hey there, meteorologist Daniel Grant. The 9 News Weather Center tracking a really windy weekend. It's coming up from a storm out to the west, bringing in rain and snowfall across the Pacific Northwest, but strong winds for us. We've already seen them in and around the foothills. 39-mile-per-hour speeds near Netherland with 40-mile-per-hour gusts in Allens Park, as well as Blackhawk. Some strong winds coming through Wyoming, and that is where we have the high wind warnings in place. These will continue through Saturday afternoon with wind gusts as high as 75 miles per hour. We've already seen those extend out into the Nebraska Panhandle too. As we go throughout tonight, those winds will be more in that 30-mile-per-hour range, and that's the way we wake up early tomorrow morning. As the afternoon goes on, the speeds start to increase 40, 50, possibly 60-mile-per-hour gusts coming your way up in the foothills. Tonight, mostly clear, an overnight low of 25 here in Denver. Teens, single digits up in the mountains, but high pressure is around for the weekend, so that means we stay dry, even though we do have to deal with those stronger winds. Mostly sunny skies on tap for us tomorrow, and a big warm up. How about 58, 60s across the plains, and even up in the mountains with those strong winds, it should be mild. We will cool things off, but we keep those strong winds in the forecast early next week.
A form of art that can only be seen from up above.
I'm getting old and I want to leave a legacy behind me, and a legacy of photographs of drawings like this.
An artist from England is using technology to share it with the world. Your Good News had a theme on our first Friday of 2020.
Just excited for a new year and a new decade. I'm excited about 2020 and to see what the new year brings.
Let's head out to Arvada to hear it next.
Summit County is world famous for its places to hike, bike, and ski. The town of Silverthorne would also like to be known for its arts and culture, so the town invited a world-renowned artist to come and share an art form that very few people have ever seen in person.
Normally I'd listen to music. All these lines across it, I had music on when I was doing those. I'm Simon Beck, I'm 61 years old, and nowadays I make patterns in the snow. I'm from southwest England, but I spend winter living in my apartment in the ski resort of Les Arcs, which is in the French Alps. I've just been flown out to make drawings for the local council. Even since I was a small child, I used to like these patterns. I've done quite a lot of these Van Gogh snowflakes. You just stamp out a line in the snow using these rackets. The normal routine is to try and get it done in one long session in one day. 15 years since I made my first drawing, and 10 years since I decided to take it seriously and make as many as I could. Things really took off when I started putting things on Facebook. There's various messages and motives behind it. It is partly, and certainly at the start was very much to draw awareness to the fact that we need snow, and we need cold weather, and we need winters.
That is pretty. Beck is scheduled to work in Silverthorne for about 2 weeks. That snowflake is at North Pond Park. Unfortunately, the wind can quickly erase Beck's work, which is why taking pictures is part of that process. Hey, let's head out to Arvada for our first Good News Friday in 2020. That's next. First round of good news in the new year. We'll start out at Memorial Park in Arvada.
Johnny Roberts is a very homey park.
Sweet shot.
My name's Brian. My good news is that I'm here playing golf on this beautiful day. And what's going to be even more wonderful than that is when I go home and kiss my girlfriend and wake her up with all my kisses, and that'll make me happy. And if I could just make a basket. That's the sound we like to hear.
Out here on a beautiful day. Just excited for a new year and a new decade, you know? Turning the chapter, lots of change. I see a bright future.
My other good news is when you actually succeed in throwing a certain shot, it fills you up with joy. It really does. If you're playing with anybody, they get excited because they'll be like, whoa, you actually just did that? Let me try. You know, it's really fun.
My full-time job is being a painter, an artist. I also work in other mediums too. Been making some kaleidoscopes lately. So I'm excited about 2020 and to see what the new year brings.
My other good news is just love people and take care of each other. Just enjoy each other. Because there's not much around here in the world no more. It's just take care of each other. That's all I gotta say.
So Nicholas notices that RTD's narrowing the list of leaders and that Kyle isn't here tonight. We don't know the list. See you next time.